mother. So my mother told me that her father would get her to come out, and the horse would come to her, and you got to get the horse.
Right.
So I remember being down there, believe it or not. I remember being down there in the 40s. 19. I was born in 41, so I remember going down there when I was 5 or 6.
Didn't you tell me they like didn't have electricity there or something?
They had no electricity early on at that time. I remember, I believe I do remember when they had no electricity. And they had the kerosene lamps. And these kerosene lamps, they could cast flickering shadows on the interior cottage walls, which was thatched, by the way. The roof
Wow.
was thatched.
It was 150 years old by that time.
Yeah, and it wasn't an uncommon method of roofing at that time, thatching.
Which was this? Is this the same place that Auntie Florrie
Yeah.
used to? Same house?
Yeah,
So that house used to be thatched?
yeah,
Not our house in Dublin.
No, I know. The house in Clare.
yeah,
Yeah.
she knows them.
Yeah.
That used to be thatched, right?
Amazing. I didn't realize that house was that old.
Oh, yeah, it's
How
very
old is that house?
Huh?
How old is that house?
It's over, it could be approaching 200 years old.
Amazing.
150, 200
No wonder
years
it was so
old.
cold and drafty.
Yeah, and I got a screwdriver out there. I was down there one time, and there was something needed repairing, and I needed a screwdriver. And Florrie searched in some drawer and came up with a screwdriver. And the screwdriver is a really ancient screwdriver, one of the first ever made, with a wooden handle and a kind of a slightly bent shaft. And accidentally, I brought it with me back to America, so I have it down in Roanoke, the screwdriver.
That's pretty cool.
But
You still have it?
Yep.
but anyway, I actually, in one of these trips, I was born in 41, the war was on. And when my mother that was her summer vacation, when my father died when I was 3 months old in a car wreck. So my mother got a job. She only had a high school education, but she was a pretty smart lady. And she got a job in the civil service in Dublin, and she had her own house and everything in Dublin. And that was her summer vacation, so we went down there. When I got sick, I was only a baby or something like that, 2 or 3 years old, and I suppose they used to feed me, they get milk from the cows, and they fed me warm milk from the cows, and I got gastroenteritis or something, and so I had a number of very severe illnesses when I was a child. And my mother actually, there weren't many drugs available, it being wartime, so I was sitting there more, I was dying almost.
Wow.
But she nursed me back to life. She stayed 3 weeks. Apparently, she didn't leave my side for 3 weeks. She told me. I can hardly believe. Her parents were there too, but she put a tremendous effort in.
I can believe it.
I pulled through somehow or other. So I have a lot to her and thank her for an awful lot, believe me. But yeah, it was.
These days you can actually get a vaccine against, what is it, the vaccine that you could get? It's the diarrhea illness.
So anyway, I had a few things, but I survived. And actually, I was treated by the father of a subsequent Irish president. He was a doctor. Hillary was his name. And anyway, I can remember being down there, and we used to have a horse, and they had a horse and trap to get around, like a horse-drawn thing. And even then in the 40s, that was their transportation. And they made their own clothes in those subsistence days. They made their own trousers and everything else. There were fairs where, cattle were traded. And my grandfather would bring his cattle that he wanted to sell down to the fair. They'd be in the middle of a town, actually. The whole town would be taken over. There'd be cattle everywhere, beside all these stores and everything. Milltown, Malbay, they had cattle there. And, he'd sell his cows and get some calves. I don't know where he got the calves from, and then he'd raise some more, And they had, he killed pigs too. He'd kill his own pigs, for meat and stuff like that. I don't know if he killed any cows. I don't think he did. In one of these episodes of killing a pig, he lost his eye. I don't know exactly how it happened, but there was a somehow.
Jeez,
It
that's
was
bad.
a bad accident, and he lost one of his eyes. But, you know, when I first went to live with Auntie Florrie in Dublin in 1964, her mother and father were staying there with her. She never married,
Right.
and they were kind of too old to work the farm, you know, more or less retired, living on an old age pension, which you could get in Ireland by just by virtue of being 70 or something. And so I was able to enjoy, you know, the company of my mother's father and mother for a few years, you know, before they died, you know. It was actually in my third year with Florrie that her father died. He happened to be down in County Clare visiting his old house, and he had a heart attack, you know, and his son was with him, Frank. And he drove him to the hospital, but it was too late. He was 87, so
Well, that's not too bad.
Good longevity on that branch of the family.
And you know, the old woman
It's not the
lived
best
to
steal.
be 96 or something like that. The old lady lived to be 96, my grandmother. Now, my father, of course, he had, I don't know how long he would have lived, but, so anyway, I got to know them when I was living with them with Florrie there, and that was great. I mean, I got to really know them and that kind of thing. The sad thing is that while I was there, the second year I think I was there was a strange law in effect in Ireland that allowed the government to seize your land and give you almost worthless land bonds in return. And give the land, they gave the land, they divided it up or gave a
Right,
whole lot
right.
to some of
Yeah,
them.
I think Jim told me that.
So of the 20 acres, apparently the neighbor had applied to get this land seized so he could get it and have a more bigger holding, so he could be more efficient. And you know,
That's what happened to the land.
so they had left the land. They were in their 70s, late 70s, and you know, so the land was just taken. And
That's
I'd
a
asked
shame.
Florrie at the time whether she might consider having a legal action, but she didn't want any interference in that subject. She just wanted to let it pass. So
Yeah.
she lost the land, you know. Did get to keep the cottage, the old house, on 5 acres.
Is it still in the family?
Yeah, but she gave it to her nephew and niece. The Darcys. Her sister Maura was married to a guy called Paddy Darcy. He was an insurance agent, good man. But anyway, he had various children, and
So
she gave it to two.
your aunt's nephew is what in relation to you then?
First
He's
cousin.
my first
First
cousin.
cousin.
Yeah. So he was lucky enough to get that place. She gave it to him kind of, she was getting old herself, into her 70s or something. And he'd probably been asking for it or something, you know, so. She gave it to him because he had been helping her out, you know, fixing, he's an electrician, and he, you know, fixed things in the house and that kind of stuff. Although she did pay him for some of the work. But anyway, she gave him the house and his sister the house, so. Initially, we were all told that we could go there, you know, if we wanted to. But I've been there once or twice since they owned it. They did let us stay there, but I think they have it rented out now or something. I haven't been told recently. It was a beautiful place within 3 miles of the coast, actually, just beautiful land, you know.
Wow.
And anyway,
Well, 5 acres is still nothing to sneeze at, so
no, but you
it's a pretty good
So do
size.
they still own the 5 acres, or did they
I
sell
think
it?
they still own it. I think they still own it. But anyway, that's the way it goes. So I don't know whether, you know, even if I did have it, it would be hard to maintain it. And actually, the Irish government now is so bankrupt with this financial crisis that's prevalent in the Western world that they have had to institute some heavy taxes on second homes, you know. So
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was saying, you know, it's, even if I did have it, I mean, I'm still good friends with the people who got it, you know. But, and in a way, it would be almost like a millstone around your neck to have the place now, because it requires a lot of maintenance.
Alright, so
And actually, Pat, the electrician, has done some good work in the house, but it requires a lot more, you know. There's a kind of a septic tank system there, but it needs to be rebuilt, you know. And he's done some good bit of electrical work in the house. But then the house is just sitting there for a long time with nobody in it in the winter, you know, getting damp and everything and that kind of thing. What would have been a good thing would be the wind blows a lot there. It really blows a lot there. You know?
put a turbine in a.
Yeah, and just instead of getting too fancy, you know, I mean, you could have. I thought about doing it even if I'd owned the place. I probably would have done it. I thought about doing it like 20, 30 years ago, because you could just have some kind of a wind turbine there driving a generator, a crudely regulated generator that would generate, depending on how hard the wind blow, you'd have to have some regulator to prevent excessive voltage being generated, you know, which you could do. And then just, even if the frequency was all over the place, you could discharge it across some resistors in the various rooms in the house, keep the place warm, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and keep the dampness out, and make it comfortable, you know. And most of the time the wind is blowing, and especially in winter and all that, a lot of the year, the wind is blowing 10 or 20 miles an hour and more there sometimes. You just have to have something that was proof against the storm when it's blowing 70 or 80 miles an
Right.
hour, you know. But I'm sure you could get something.
Does it regularly get hurricane force winds there?
Not hurricanes, the hurricanes are not so common, but you get, not regularly, but you get, I mean, maybe once a year you might get 50 or 60 mile an hour
Wow.
winds on some day, you know.
It's a very windy place. Really clear.
I remember like when the old man died, it was 87 down there,
I mean, don't
and we
you?
went down for the funeral. I went and I drove Florrie down that day for the funeral of her father. And she got out at some point, somewhere along the road down there near her house, for some reason. And Florrie was just a small woman, pretty light, you know, weighed about 90 pounds. But the wind just lifted her up off the ground and she
Wow.
blew her over.
Really?
Yeah.
You remember how windy Inishmaan was?
Yeah, yeah. Then I remember the wind turbines on Ishmael.
So it's a beautiful place, you know, and for a while there, then, you know, things have gone crazy in Ireland. That the banks have caused Ireland tremendous problems with this financial crisis. With the whole European Union, it was kind of a screwed up system where, you know, the European Union wasn't thought fully through, in my opinion. You know, when they all got together, and first of all, they had you know, a kind of a free trade area and that kind of stuff. You know, now they're trying to work for political union. I'm not sure that'll ever work out. I don't know if you've heard the news, but David Cameron, Prime Minister of England, has said that he's going to ask the British people if they want to stay in the European Union, which is pretty big news. England really wants to stay in the European Union the way they're in it right now. I'm sure they might like to be in it for trading purposes, but it has become progressively more and more bureaucracy from Brussels, where the European Parliament sits, you know,
Right.
and taken over all kinds of decisions, you know. Bureaucrats there have certain ideas about what they want, and they're forcing it on everybody. And a lot of people, my mother kind of foresaw this, and she